Arknights!
Welcome. In this video, the event, The Great Chief Returns, will be summarized. Throughout the video, there will be spoilers for the story of Arknights. If you don't want to be spoiled, please go and play the game. After their aircraft crashes in the wilderness of Sargon, Gavio revives the unconscious doctor with a series of slaps, while Ciabi eagerly watches nearby. The group discovers that local Archosaurians have stolen the aircraft's engine, though Gavio swiftly defeats them in combat. When her name registers with the attackers, they rush off to inform someone named Eunectes, leaving Gavio visibly unsettled. Meanwhile, Ciabi wanders off and consumes wild vegetation, sending her into vivid hallucinations where she battles imaginary reunion soldiers. Lancet 2 and the pilot Dylan stay behind to guard the damaged aircraft while the others prepare to move out. The party learns that they must travel to a nearby temple to locate a clan leader named Zumama, who likely ordered the attack. A young Archosauria woman named Tomimi arrives and enthusiastically reunites with Gavio, revealing she leads what was once Gavio's own tribe, now renamed Gavio's Will, in her honor. Tomimi explains that Zumama has become a powerful clan chief and a frontrunner to become the next great chief at an upcoming ceremony called the Mahui Zoitia. Gavio, who originally left her homeland under ostracism, remains dismissive of any suggestion that she should compete for the chieftainship herself. Tomimi arranges for people to transport and guard the aircraft before agreeing to guide the group to the temple. The journey is expected to be long and arduous, cutting through dense rainforest with no shelter in sight. Lancet 2 reminds everyone to prepare for the region's drastic nighttime temperature drops before the party sets off. The group treks through the rainforest of Akahula the morning after camping overnight, with Gavio preparing soup and reflecting on the abundance of medicinal plants growing nearby. Tomimi briefs the doctor on the regional's political landscape, explaining that 3 dominant tribes have emerged in the absence of a great chief: Zumama's resource-rich Eunectes tribe, Kemar's Flint tribe settled deep in the rainforest, and the trade-focused Imam Committee. The journey is briefly derailed when Gavio overhears a heated argument between locals over whether thick or thin tails are superior, and she immediately throws herself into the debate. The disagreement escalates into a brawl, but Gavio resolves it quickly and lets the fighters retreat rather than pursuing them as she once would have. She then notices that Tomimi's combat arts have grown considerably stronger, and casually invites her to consider becoming a Rhodes Island operator. As they near the temple, crowds of Takua recognize Gavio and erupt with excitement at her return. Upon arriving at the ceremony grounds, the group is surprised to hear unfamiliar music playing over speakers left behind by a traveling band called AUS. Tomimi explains that AUS visited Akahula the previous year, performing first at Inam's tribe before being invited to stay for an extended performance near the temple. Their powerful arts-infused music deeply resonated with the Takua, and many came to see them as heralds of the Mahui Zutia before they mysteriously departed. The speakers they left behind can only be operated by priests and shamans with arts abilities, making them rare and prized. Gavio, hearing the music for the first time in this context, feels an immediate rush of energy and admits she is quickly becoming a fan. The party presses forward into the ceremony grounds, eager to find Zumama and reclaim their stolen engine. At the temple, the group watches the ceremony's combat trials while Gavio searches for any sign of Zumama, coming up empty. A flashback reveals that as a young orphan raised by her tribe, Gavio once entered the ceremony on a whim and effortlessly defeated a seasoned champion with just 2 punches before being stopped in a day-long draw against a rival named Zumama. Back in the present, the still hallucinating Ciabi suddenly crashes the ceremony, mistaking the winning fighter Pita for a reunion soldier and sending him flying before the crowd can process what just happened. The chaos spirals as more challengers pile on, and Gavio makes the call to let Ciabi handle it rather than escalate the situation further. When Ciabi spots another imaginary enemy and bolts, Gavio gives chase and leaves the doctor alone with Tomimi. During the wait, Tomimi quietly probes the doctor about what Gavio's life is like outside Akahula, making it clear she still deeply hopes Gavio will one day return. Tomimi recounts how the long ago ceremony ended. Gavio and Zumama fought from noon till nightfall without either claiming victory, both eventually being carried off by bystanders. Tomimi describes Zumama as someone once close to Gavio who abruptly lost interest in fighting and turned her focus entirely to building machines, eventually moving her tribe away and cutting off contact. Notably, Zumama never appeared at the final chaotic ceremony before Gavio left Akahula for good. Back in the present, Gavio returns from her fruitless chase after Siabe, frustrated but unconcerned given the latter's resilience. Zumama has not arrived at the temple still, but the trials press on, with a new challenger stepping forward just as Gavio returns. Zumama, now going by Eunectes, arrives at the temple arena to thunderous cheers and swiftly defeats her first challenger before two rival tribe leaders, Uda and Aruna, enter together under a joint pact to take her down. Gavio watches from the crowd, explaining to the doctor that while the ceremony has no formal rules, the straightforward fighters of Akahula would never think to use underhanded tactics. Tomimi, competing herself, opts to wait strategically and let Zumama exhaust the coalition before she steps in. However, when Zumama proves more dominant than expected, Gavio can no longer restrain herself and leaps into the arena despite having said she wouldn't fight. The two old rivals exchange blows evenly while catching up, with Zumama revealing she has spent years studying the outside world and preparing something significant. Gavio presses her on why she missed the last ceremony, and Zumama cryptically replies that whatever she was working on is now finished. As the duel continues, Zumama tells Gavio that relying solely on raw strength is what holds their people back, hinting that change is coming for Akahula. A massive, thunderous rumbling then shakes the forest as something enormous approaches the temple from the trees. Zumama declares that she had not planned to use it so soon, but fighting Gavio has forced her hand, and she orders her high priest to aim and fire. A giant mechanical walker piloted by a macaw emerges from the jungle and blasts the temple with a cannon, sending the crowd into chaos. Standing amid the destruction, Zumama calmly reiterates her philosophy to Gavio. The era of fists is over, and the age of machines has just begun. After being knocked out by Zumama's mechanical walker, Gavio regains consciousness and accepts her defeat without complaint, even expressing genuine admiration for the machine. Zumama, now declared Great Chief, addresses the crowd and proclaims that the end of the old combat tradition is here, arguing that tools and machines represent a greater power than raw strength alone. The mood shifts quickly when Gavio spots two Eunectes tribe members nearby, and discovers one of them, Yota, is suffering from an acute oropathy attack brought on by working in mines. Gavio stabilizes him and immediately connects the dots. Zumama has been sending her people deep into the mines to source ore for her machine, exposing them to oropathy in the process. Gavio then reveals her own history with the disease, explaining she contracted it rescuing a young Tomimi from the depths of the mines years ago. Rather than facing discrimination, Gavio was smothered with protective care, which she found suffocating, ultimately driving her to rage through the ceremony and leave Akahula entirely. With Yoda's life stabilized, Gavio arranges for Tomimi's people to carry him back to the aircraft so Lancet 2 can begin proper treatment. Gavio makes it clear she has no interest in Zumama's ideological proclamations. If people are dying for the sake of building machines, Zumama has earned a confrontation. Tomimi, uncharacteristically evasive, tells Gavio she has something to handle first and arranges to meet them later at the Great Waterfall. Yogi, Yoda's brother, insists on joining Gavio despite her refusal, and she instead sends him ahead with a direct message for Zumama. She wants to talk. The group splits up, with Gavio and the doctor setting off towards Zumama's territory, while Tomimi breaks away on her own errand. Deep in the rainforest, Gavio and the doctor stop at a settlement of Inam, a laid-back Liberia trader who turns out to be an official messenger from Sargon, stationed in Akahula since childhood with virtually nothing to do. Inam explains that the region was once a Sargon mining colony abandoned after a catastrophe, and that outside powers have occasionally considered reclaiming it. She also reveals she was an interpreter for AUS during their visit, and proudly shows a signed album. The reunion takes a chaotic turn when Utage is discovered leading a charge on the village at the head of a bewildered Archosaurus tribe, having accidentally become their leader after defeating them in a series of fights they started with her. After subduing the commotion, Utage learns the ceremony is already over and grumbles that the trip bears no resemblance to the beach vacation she was expecting. Gavial assumes her route to Zumama's tribe passes a great waterfall, which smooths things over considerably. Before the group departs, Inam hands Gavial a stack of books to deliver to Mimi, city lifestyle guides and fashion manuals that Tomimi has been using, letter by letter, to teach herself Sargonian and learn about the outside world. Inam notes with quiet admiration that Tomimi has been working remarkably hard to close the gap between herself and Gavial, even if her study materials leave something to be desired. The conversation turns to Zumama, who also learned Sargonian entirely on her own and has been teaching it to her entire tribe, prompting Gavial to quietly wonder what she is planning. Inam muses that outside contact would improve lives there, though she maintains that Akahula's simple way of life has its own worth. The reunited group, Gavial, the Doctor, Croissant, and Utage, prepare to push forward to Zumama's territory and the waterfall beyond. Following the ceremony, Eunectes debriefs with her eccentric high priest, a small Liberi who is the only one willing to pilot the still unfinished big ugly thing, despite its tendency to explode during development. When Yogi arrives to report that his brother contracted oropathy in mines, Eunectes is furious, having already warned her people to stay away from the depths. She learns that Gavial treated him and is now heading her way, clearly angry, and begins deploying the big ugly thing to stop her. A short, stout Liberi fighter named Flint, leader of the rainforest-dwelling Flint tribe, overhears and volunteers to intercept Gavial herself, only to immediately ask where Gavial actually is. Meanwhile, in a secret meeting, Tomimi reveals she's been orchestrating a coalition of tribes under the banner of Gavial's will, with the sole aim of forcing Gavial to become the Great Chief and stay in Akahula permanently. Flint, following directions towards Gavial, instead stumbles upon a lost and sweat-soaked Blaze wandering the rainforest in her swimsuit. Unable to communicate, Flint simply attacks her, recognizing her as a strong fighter, but is thoroughly defeated and carried back unconscious. When Flint wakes up and realizes Blaze is stronger than even Zumama, she immediately abandons her mission and begs to become Blaze's disciple instead. The now fully reunited group, Gavial, the Doctor, Croissant, Utage, Blaze, and the newly attached Flint, share information, and Blaze reacts with immediate outrage upon hearing that Eunectes has been exposing her people to oropathy for the sake of building machines. Back at the aircraft, Dylan and Lancet 2 pass the time in idle conversation, with Dylan lamenting his boredom while Lancet 2 cheerfully notes that his health is actually improved from the fresh air and natural surroundings. A message arrives via Inam, delivered on the Doctor's behalf, giving the two of them a new task to occupy themselves with. Meanwhile, the main group reaches the Great Waterfall, which lives up to every expectation, and the operators take a well-earned break before the final push to Zumama's tribe. Utage and Croissant splash around in makeshift swimwear, while Blaze and Flint spar wordlessly by the water's edge, communicating entirely through their fighting stances. Seaby, still lost in her mushroom-induced hallucination, stumbles onto the scene and rolls joyfully through the water, convinced that she has discovered a mushroom sea. Gavial attempts to have a quiet moment with the Doctor, but keeps getting interrupted, ultimately abandoning any serious conversation in favor of asking whether her tail looks fatter. Tomimi rejoins the group at the waterfall, having finished whatever errand she slipped away to handle, though she remains tight-lipped about what it actually was. Utage immediately latches onto her, declaring her style a fashion disaster and volunteering herself as a personal consultant, much to Tomimi's bewilderment. The reunion is short-lived as Seaby suddenly snaps into a new hallucination, declaring her break over and bolts into the direction of Zumama's tribe. Gavial rallies everyone to give chase, and the group scrambles to get moving, with Utage barely pausing to change before sprinting after the rest. With the whole party now together and Zumama's territory just up ahead, the situation shifts from a scattered vacation into something more urgent. The Eunectes tribe's mechanics fumble excitedly with the stolen engine, managing to get it running through a combination of trial and error, while the High Priest periodically gets blasted across the yard in testing accidents. The group arrives at Eunectes' village to find CB already inside, still hallucinating and brawling with confused tribe people who have no idea what a reunion soldier is. Gavio knocks CB hard enough to snap her out of the hallucination and gives her a quick medical check before finally sitting down with Eunectes. Gavio immediately accuses her of recklessly exploiting her people to oropathy, to which Eunectes calmly reveals she's always forbidden her people from going deep into the mines, and that Yogi's brother acted against direct orders. Eunectes then removes her clothes to reveal her own oropathy crystals, demonstrating that she knows the risk better than anyone, having grown up working those very mines herself. Gavio acknowledges her mistake and apologizes without hesitation, a resolution which baffles Utage, who has been bracing for a dramatic standoff. With the oropathy misunderstanding resolved, Gavio pivots to the matter of the stolen engine, and Eunectes flatly refuses to return it under any circumstances. The reason becomes clear when Eunectes reveals the engine is currently powering the big ugly thing itself, meaning that getting it back requires defeating the machine in combat. The High Priest cheerfully rolls the walker out in anticipation of a fight before being waved off temporarily, as Eunectes insists on finishing her conversation first. Gavio greets the prospect of another round against the big ugly thing with open enthusiasm rather than dread. With nothing left to negotiate, both sides agree to settle the matter the only way Akahula really knows how, and Eunectes leads the group to the fight. At the Eunectes tribe's village, Eunectes explains to Gavio that seeing a Sargon nomadic city pass by when they were children was the moment that changed everything for her, making her feel insignificant and driving her to abandon fighting in favor of understanding machines. She frames Gavio not as an enemy but as an obstacle to progress, arguing that people of Akahula will never embrace change while they idolize raw strength above all else. The duel with the big ugly thing begins in earnest, and Gavio holds her own against its cannon and iron fist. But the situation turns dangerous when the engine pushes the machine past its limits and the High Priest loses control entirely. The big ugly thing goes haywire and begins attacking indiscriminately, forcing the whole group into an emergency fight to bring it down, with an even freshly recovered Siabi jumping into the fray. After a long and grueling battle, the machine is finally destroyed, and the High Priest, somehow unharmed as always, walks away muttering about varying his battle cry next time. With the big ugly thing dismantled, Eunectes concedes defeat and returns the engine, acknowledging that Gavio has won and therefore is rightfully the Great Chief. Gavio, unwilling to take the title permanently, accepts it just long enough to make a public declaration appointing Tomimi as her acting representative, trusting that her own authority as victor will make the arrangement stick. She also informs Eunectes that she will be coming to Rhodes Island for an oropathy examination, framing it as a Great Chief's order to ensure compliance. The two old rivals part on good terms, each promising a rematch on their own terms in the future. However, as Gavio prepares to leave, Tomimi plants herself firmly in the path and refuses to let her go. Tomimi finally confesses that she was behind everything. She organized the entire ceremony, lured Gavio back with her letter, and was the one who shot down the aircraft, all in a desperate scheme to make Gavio stay and become the Great Chief. The Doctor reveals that they had pieced it together long before the confrontation, and Dylan and Lancet 2 had been held as fake hostages free themselves easily, producing the rocket launcher recovered from Tomimi's tribe as proof. Gavio responds by putting Tomimi over her knee for a tail spanking, and the matter is considered settled. The mood shifts when Eunectes catches sight of Lancet 2 moving and talking independently, and is so overwhelmed with awe that she immediately declares she wants to join Rhodes Island to study mechanical technology. Tomimi, unwilling to be separated from Gavio again, announces that she's coming too, and Flint wordlessly insists on following Blaze. The question of who will lead the tribes in their absence is resolved when the High Priest points out that people are already adapting on their own, combining fighting and machine building with characteristic enthusiasm, and Gavio quietly offloads the Great Chief title onto a startled Enam. Back at Rhodes Island, Calicut delivers a measured debriefing, deducting repair costs from Gavio and Blaze's pay before accepting 3 new potential operators into the Doctor's care. She then admits, in her characteristically understated way, that she had prepared a contingency plan in case Gavio chose to not come back, prompting Gavio to recognize it as a rare expression of care. Gavio responds with a candid declaration of why she left Akahula and why she has no intention of leaving Rhodes Island. Medicine has given her purpose, showing her a broader world, and offered her the best possible place to pursue her own dream of treating oropathy. She heads off to give Eunectes her checkup, while Blaze goes to keep an eye on Flint, and the doctor is sent to check on Tamimi in her general studies class. Calicut quietly welcomes Gavio home before turning her back to work, and closes with a private reflection that the journey, however chaotic, was a reminder that the world remains vivid and full of things worth holding on to. Thank you for watching. Please follow my Twitter and Blue Sky for updates, and please check out my other Uma Musume and Azure Lane videos as well. There will be a teaser out tomorrow for next week's character summaries.